This is a one-nation budget that takes the necessary steps and follows a sensible path for the benefit of the whole United Kingdom. And this is a Conservative budget that can only be delivered because the British people trusted us to finish the job.
George Osborne has just delivered the first entirely Tory budget for 19 years. It was promised to be a massive statement, and massive it certainly was. We've seen a huge attempt by this government to lower taxation, lower benefits, big cuts in welfare and increase wages. So there's a big rise in the minimum wage for anyone over 25, offset by very, very steep cuts in tax credits and housing benefit, really taking a lot of money away from low-income families in work, but also offset again by an increase in the minimum wage and some tax cuts with some small increases in the personal allowance. But that isn't it. There's big cuts in corporate tax, corporation tax going down to 18% from 20%, then rises in the taxation of dividends to try and offset that, and big changes also to capital gains taxes. But you could go on. The list I've got in front of me is about 20 points long. Normally there'd only be 2 or 3 things that are very large. This time there's a huge, huge number. The big economic news, of course, is that the pace of austerity is actually being slowed. So instead of reaching a surplus in 2018-19, George Osborne wants to reach it 1 year later, 2019-20. There's no doubt that this budget is George Osborne unleashed. He's doing what he wants to do. He wants to change the tax system. He wants to change Britain's economy into one that's funded by companies and people don't get welfare.
It's a good job that George Osborne has promised to refurbish an old RAF bunker in West London. He might need it to hide in when American and French finance ministers see what he's done in reducing corporation tax to 18% by 2020. To them, this may seem as if the UK is becoming even more of a tax haven. Business and the city will be delighted, however, because it will give us one of the most competitive tax regimes in the developed world. Effective rates will probably be something more like 16%. However, for the big banks, this is a budget that has promise rather than having entirely delivered. There is going to be a tapering of the bank levy, which they hate, over a period of years, but it will be counterbalanced by the imposition of an 8% surcharge on corporation tax. Meanwhile, if you're a hedge fund manager or a private equity boss, you may be pretty fed up, because the Chancellor has said he's going to remove tax loopholes that currently reduce the carried interest tax payments of those high flyers from 28% to almost zero.
The biggest surprise in this budget was George Osborne's announcement of a new minimum wage rate for over 25-year-olds. This was a total shock. It completely overrides the independent low pay commission, who's normally tasked with deciding what the minimum wage rate should be. It will push up the wages of about 6 million workers. That's out of about 31 million. So it's a pretty big deal, but the big gamble is, can he get away with this without pushing up unemployment? Business lobby groups so far, they're not so sure.
Personal finance changes announced in the budget include a lifting of the rate of income tax so that you don't have to start paying income tax until you're earning £11,000 a year. Also, for middle earners, until you're earning £43,000 a year, you don't qualify for the 40p higher rate. Other big changes are non-doms will no longer be allowed to be non-doms for longer than 15 years, an end to the permanent status, and buy-to-let landlords are facing restrictions on the amount of mortgage tax relief they can claim. Pensions too, a signal of big changes there, with a green paper to be announced on pensions, the tax treatment of pensions. Instead of being taxed when you withdraw your contributions, they may well be taxed when you go in. And some big changes to watch out for there.